Hey, it's Jordan. I am joined by Jeff Cohen. You are executive producer on a wonderful documentary I'm looking forward to talking about, Corporate Coup d'etat. Also founder of Theyre, which is a really important, I think, one of the preeminent journalism groups, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, and also co-founder of rootsaction.org. And you taught journalism at Ithaca for many, many years. I saw you recently at the Left Forum where we did a panel on corporate media, and I think what this film, Corporate Coup d'etat, which I've watched half of it, not the whole thing yet, but I'm looking forward to finishing, I think really what it shows is kind of everything the corporate media has ignored for the last 20, 30 years. It has Chris Hedges in it and many others. I'll let you describe what kind of, you're an executive producer, what was the beginning stages, what inspired this film, and what do you really think comes across most?
It could be argued that we are now in the midst of a coup d'etat in slow motion. Democracy is weakening, corporatism is strengthening, yet none of us has chosen this route for our society, in spite of which our elites, quite happily, continue down it.
Trump is the symptom, he's not the disease. The corporate coup d'etat was begun in the early 1970s, reconfiguring the global economy into an incredibly wealthy global oligarchic class.
This used to be the pride of the nation. It's gone. It's gone.
I used to wake up in the morning to the noise of the blast furnace rumbling. Now I wake up to them tearing the facility down.
Companies that were nation-state based started to go multinational, then they started to go transnational. The shifting of manufacturing to the global south, where the wages were lower, where the environmental rules were not either existent or enforced.
But the people here, they're hurting. Their jobs are gone. Their jobs are gone.
On paper, there are something like 9,000 or 10,000 registered lobbyists, but in reality, the number is closer to 100,000. Do they have any influence over the vote?
Not on mine.
They're just looting and stealing as fast as they can as everything collapses.
They set the stage for a savior. Obama was supposed to be that savior, and he wasn't. And what happens after a savior fails you, you look to something very different.
Corporations are literally going wild over this.
If Donald Trump goes away, we'll find another Trump. Believe me, we'll find another one.
And the corporate elites, they want to divide us. They want to divide and conquer. It is a strategy as old as the elites who emerged from the cave in the history of the species.
The idea that after an experiment of 150, 200 years of becoming more and more democratic, that we would suddenly slip back into this old authoritarian top-down model, that is very destructive. And you can already see the signs of that destruction in what's happening in our societies.
Well, we made a movie a couple years earlier called All Governments Lie, and it was based on I.F. Stone and then a lot of the Izzy Stones that walk among us today. So we featured Glenn Greenwald and Jeremy Scahill and Amy Goodman and Nermeen Sheikh and Michael Moore. And Jeremy Scahill in that movie said, there's been a corporate coup that's taken place. And these crazy right-wingers who are worried about the black helicopters and Obama's going to take back their guns, they don't even know what happened. And that was one of the impetuses. And then there's this great public intellectual in Canada, John Ralston Saul, who in the mid-90s said, we are in the midst of a corporate coup d'etat in slow motion, where the elites are channeling wealth and power to the top, and democracy is weakening. So we went all over the country to explore the corporate takeover of U.S. democracy. It's been going on since the 1970s. we not only talk about how corporations used lobbyists and how the laws were changed and the regulations loosened in order for corporations to take political and economic power. A key point of the movie, and I'm sure you saw, is the effect of the corporate coup d'etat on working class people of all colors. So we send Chris Hedges into the sacrifice zone of Camden, New Jersey, and we send an African-American reporter, a public radio reporter, Philip Martin, to the sacrifice zone known as Youngstown, Ohio. And the importance of sacrifice zones is after, neoliberal capitalism exploits, gets all the money it can out of a city or a place, and then can find cheaper labor and less environmental restrictions in some other locale or country. They just abandon that zone and it becomes a sacrifice zone. And I think that's the high point of the movie, is to show the human impact of the corporate coup d'etat. And as we showed in Youngstown, Ohio, a lot of those white working class voters who've been lifelong Democrats, they flipped to Trump in the last election.
What I found interesting is it pinpoints it to the 1970s, and we've heard even from people like Obama, globalization is a great thing, and jobs of the future and jobs of tomorrow. But Chris Hedges put it pretty simply, no, they're just stealing from you, and they're just stealing from us. So it kind of shows how globalization was sold as this inevitable thing, just like automation and artificial intelligence is being sold as just an inevitable thing. You can't stop the trains to the future. But really, it's been a hoarding of money from everybody who built America to a very few.
And I think we show that well in Youngstown. And what's fascinating about Youngstown, Ohio, is we interviewed these workers who had voted for Obama. They'd been Democrats. Some of them voted for Bernie in the primary over Hillary in the Democratic primary in Ohio, and then they flipped to Trump. And if you could describe in one word why, that word is NAFTA. That they saw, as you were saying, Clinton was selling free trade. Oh, this is going to be great. This is going to help other countries buy our products. No union, no environmental group, no consumer group believed that crap when Bill Clinton was selling it. And the people in Ohio don't buy it. And Hillary basically got defeated in several states because of NAFTA and the connection of the Clinton administration to NAFTA. And now you have these same forces in the corporate media, corporate forces within the Democratic Party trying to push Biden as the solution. And Biden, of course, was in that half of the Democratic senators that joined all the Republicans and voted for NAFTA. And Donald Trump in Ohio and Michigan and Wisconsin and Western Pennsylvania, if Biden is the nominee, it'll be NAFTA, 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 like it was back in 2016 against Hillary. We show that in the movie.
What's amazing also is all these corporate media journalists, I put that with air quotes, they were just stunned. I mean, watching a panel on election night, because they're so far removed from a lot of the towns and cities you guys showed in this film, that they don't really, they do live in an alternate reality. And even when they're covering the campaign, they're not really like out there in those cities. They're more just traveling with the candidates, doing a horse race, things like that. So it really is an alternate reality, and that's why I always find it comical. We keep hearing about a booming economy, but this film shows a lot of the things I've seen on the road. Some of these cities look like no different than like Baghdad,
Yeah, that's right.
especially in the deindustrialized Midwest. And like you said, now it's like, repeat the same thing over and over, expect a different result. They're basically proposing Hillary Clinton just in a different gender, with a much longer record, Joe Biden being in the Senate. What do you attribute to that? Do you think the corporate media is just clueless and blind and, believes in this fairy tale of electability, or they're being deliberately obtuse, and they know they would rather, as Bernie Sanders says, go down on the Titanic, which is another 4 years of Trump, if it means, they have first class.
Yeah. Well, it's a tough one because, I worked in the mainstream media. I worked at CNN. I worked at MSNBC. I was even at Fox News the first 5 years. So I've seen these people up close. You touched on something important. They are disconnected from working class people of all colors. And they don't get what working class people have been going through in recent decades. Because remember, salaries are going up in the media, at the Times, at the Post, at CNN and MSNBC. When I worked at MSNBC right before the Iraq invasion, I earned more money that 1 year than I'd earned in the previous 5 or 6 working at Theyre. So, I mean, these people are out of touch, and then that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is all of their sources are pushing them in a certain direction. Katie Halper had this wonderful investigative piece investigating the New York Times coverage of Bernie Sanders, especially as written by the young reporter who came out of Wall Street, who they've appointed to cover the Bernie Sanders campaign, and her name is Sydney Ember. And so besides the cluelessness, it's that who are they surrounded by, these elite reporters? They're surrounded by these think tanks and these Democratic leadership people that are equally disconnected from the working class, who keep telling them, gee, if we have transformative proposals against Wall Street or for minimum wage or Medicare for all or public college free for everyone, that's going to scare away the swing voter. And as you see in our movie, where we actually interviewed definitively swing voters, that's exactly the program they wanted to hear. You know, they want to hear transformative proposals that will do something about income inequality. Now, the swing voters, by definition, you know, they're not Black Lives Matter activists. You know, they're not pro-choice activists. That's what makes them swing voters. You know, they're non-ideological, they're nonpartisan, sometimes called low information voters. But they warmed up to Bernie because he had these proposals. And then when Hillary becomes the nominee, they jump to Trump because he was proposing big things. But it's only in the elite media and these Third Way and Center for American Progress, these so-called center-left think tanks that are funded by Wall Street and the big corporations. It's only there that they think, gee, if you preach incremental, slow, status, don't rock the boat changes, you're going to get these swing voters back. They're utterly clueless. And if we leave it to them and they win out, Trump will be reelected.
And what I find also interesting is, because I covered Trump in probably 40 to 50 rallies. I got the therapy bill to prove it. And he was actually selling a lot of populist-sounding things. I mean, and the wars, he said, this isn't a very Republican thing, but healthcare for everybody. It's going to be great. It's going to be beautiful. And so economically, he was talking, and of course, NAFTA, which I always said, forget Russia. He had them at NAFTA. I saw at these rallies, they were chomping at the bit. So you're getting that they are, these swing voters, a lot of Trump voters are for progressive policies, but also they like Trump because they heard somebody, they always knew something was wrong. It was building within them. Why am I now working 2 to 3 jobs? Why are all these plants closing down? YMCA's in the community. And they hear somebody coming saying, oh no, it's corrupt. Whereas Hillary Clinton, slogans of stronger together. Biden is talking about make America America again. What did you guys see in the film as far as not just being gravitating towards progressive policies, but also an anti-establishment fervor that's developed?
No doubt. There's such contempt for the elites, and Trump, as a charlatan populist, he played on it. And if you think cozying up to the elites or making nice with corporate power or claiming you're not going to rock the boat is the way to win these swing voters back. That's ridiculous. We interviewed them. And when you talk to swing voters in Ohio, some of them in the movie sound like they were Occupy Wall Street activists. They're talking about how we in the 99% have got to take power away from the 1%, and then they chose Trump over Hillary. So again, when you hear from the political and media elite that the Democrats are lurching too far to the left, they've been saying this in election after election in the New York Times. Democrats lurch too far to the left, they lose elections. Well, what's happening is when they put up someone like a Hillary Clinton or a vacillator, the swing voters will go to a charlatan populist. And trust me, this is what we learned in Ohio. And one guy in the film, a former union truck driver, says, look, if Trump goes away, we'll find a new Trump. That the people who have been deindustrialized, the people living in sacrifice zones, do not want the status quo. They do not want more of the same. They do not want Biden to restore Obama. What they were excited about is Bernie. What they could be excited about is Bernie or Warren. What they could be excited about is any Democrat running for president who says, I'm going to raise the minimum wage. I'm going to bring green jobs back to Ohio. I'm going to give your kids free public college education. I'm going to wipe out the debt. The college debt. This is what galvanizes swing voters. And there's that classic, at Roots Action, we've been analyzing what's wrong with the Democratic Party leadership and why do they lose winnable elections? Democrats are not going to win in every part of the country every time, but they clearly should have beaten Trump in 2016. So we've done this Democratic autopsy twice. Why can't the Democrats win winnable elections? And there was this great quote we found from Chuck Schumer in summer of 2016.
Yeah, I know this one, yeah.
Yeah, where he says, look, for every vote we lose in Western Pennsylvania, meaning the Rust Belt, right near Youngstown, Ohio, for every vote we lose in Western Pennsylvania, we will pick up 2 moderate Republicans in the suburbs of Philadelphia. This has been the strategy of the Democratic elites and their media cheerleaders for years. There are no more moderate Republicans. There are a few swing voters in the suburbs, but the swing voters that determined the 2016 catastrophic defeat were working class voters that Trump appealed to with his phony populism because they saw Hillary Clinton as the status quo. They will see Biden as the status quo. We've already got Kamala Harris backflipping and flip-flopping. The one thing that a swing voter understands is a flip-flopping politician. And that's who they're not for. And if the Democrats put forward a flip-flopping incremental politician as their presidential candidate, those states are very much in play for Trump again. Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin. I grew up in Michigan. I have a good feel for that area. Michael Moore, who I knew before he made his first movie, he's got a good feel for the Rust Belt. Both of us thought Hillary was going to lose, and we felt a lot of it was NAFTA.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.